guys, welcome back to Healing Echoes. Today is going to be one of my episodes with your host, Katelyn Curran. I'm really excited to get back into it. I know I did one of my own episodes about 2 weeks ago now, because I know I missed, 3 weeks, because I missed last week. Life was life, and again, I'm not gonna give you any excuses, but I'm back this week, and I'm back on video this week. The last personal episode I did, I was not on video because I was not feeling myself, but I kind of wanted to get y'all caught up on where the hell I had been and what was going on in my life, so I just did an audio. This week, I wanted to jump back on and show y'all my face. Obviously, if you are watching and not just listening, you can see that there has been some pretty drastic changes to my appearance. And or if you follow me on socials, you've been seeing it. It's nothing new. But if you don't follow my socials, I buzzed my head. And I absolutely love it. So, it is the evening today when I'm recording. It's about 6:31. So today we're probably going to be a little bit of everywhere, catching you up on some things that have been happening in my life, and just how that's been impacting my mental and my healing journey. So yeah, we're going to start with me buzzing all my fucking hair off. So this is not a first. This is not a Britney moment for me. This does not mean that my mental health is suffering. It actually, for me, means that my mental health is improving. It's going up. This is something I love doing for myself. So I'm going to tell you why. The other day on Instagram, I actually did a live video on how I get questions every time I buzz my head, and how I feel like I shouldn't really have to give reasons. It's a personal choice. And so I've kind of defaulted to telling people, why not? Because the main question I get is, why would you do that? And so my default has been, well, why not? To kind of help them self-reflect on why they think it's such an odd thing to do. But since my podcast is all about mental health and neurodivergence, I'm going to use it as an opportunity to explain why I do it and kind of show you guys how to embrace and how to advocate for yourself, especially if you're quirky and weird like I am. So like I said, it's not new for me. I actually did this about 4 or 5 years ago. I remember from a really young age, I had seen celebrities and things shaving their head or doing buzz cuts, specifically female or femme presenting people. And I just always wanted to try it. I just always wanted to see if I had that confidence. I wanted to see what I would look like with no hair or very little hair. But as a child, I did not have freedom of expression. So I was not allowed to choose my haircuts. We didn't really get our haircut. We got it trimmed on occasion, and we weren't even allowed to make decisions like bangs. And I'm not talking about when you're 5 or 6, where you cut your own bangs, or I don't know. I think even at 5 or 6, if your little girl wants bangs, let her have bangs. Hair grows back. That's my opinion. But I'm talking 13, 14, 15. I still was not allowed to decide what to do with my own appearance. And again, obviously, disclaimer, I'm not talking about allowing your child to wear booty shorts or immodest clothing. We are talking strictly about haircuts, okay? I didn't have freedom of expression in my clothes either until I was older, but right now we are specifically talking about hair, okay? So the closest to bangs that I was allowed to get was the face framing that they'll do, where they cut it in layers, but it wasn't allowed to be obvious. And in talking about this recently, I had another one of those wait, hold up, what the fuck moments, where I remember that whereas my sister also wasn't allowed to have freedom of expression, she was allowed to have it at an earlier age than I was. Because the first time my sister had bangs, she was 16. Maybe a little bit younger. And I still was not allowed to decide what kind of hairstyle I wanted at that point, especially if it was drastic. I think in large part what played a hand in this is that we used to go to one of those hair salons that was also a school. And so you were always kind of taking a risk that the hairdresser you were gonna get was a student who wasn't great. And we went when I was like 11, maybe. I know I was pretty young because I used to have really, really long hair, and it used to be like corkscrew curly. And granted, it was like those really tight corkscrews when I was really, really young. So by the time I was like 10 or 11, it wasn't as tight, but it was still really curly. And I got layers cut into it, so the curls were always very pronounced, very noticeable. And it was like halfway down my back, right? And so I had went in and I was wearing a sweater that had, like, it was like line pattern, and the student used the lines to measure where to cut my hair, but the pattern of the sweater was repetitive, right? So it would be like medium-sized line, small line, large line, and then over and over again, right? So she had measured it out originally about like 3 or 4 inches down, but where she ended up cutting was another large line, and she cut my hair to like shoulder length. I still don't know how she could have made that mistake even using the lines, because you can see a 4 to 5 inch difference. But basically she cut it so short so quickly that a lot of my curl was lost, and my mom was devastated. My mother loved my curls. She had a very specific way that she wanted me to look, and I no longer look that way. And so it kind of enhanced that, like, when you're an adult you can do what you want. I wasn't allowed to curl my hair or color my hair, even with like temporary colors, because again, like, we want to make sure that our children aren't putting like harmful chemicals on their heads and things like that. I understand that. I am a mother of 5. But when it comes to like temporary colors, or like you can even play around with, like, I think it's like Kool-Aid or something they used to do, especially in the 90s, I was not allowed to do that. I was allowed to put the fake clip colors in to play with, but that's it. So a part of becoming an adult was experimenting with my appearance. As soon as I was 18, I was out getting piercings and tattoos and cutting my hair and dyeing my hair and trying all different kinds of clothing styles, because it was like freedom. And this is another example to be able to point out to people that there is protecting your child and there's smothering your child. And the more you smother them, the more likely they are to go the absolute polar opposite direction than if you kind of slowly let them start doing their own thing and having their own responsibilities. They're less likely to go whoop all the other way. You know, they might do some things you don't like, but at least it won't be polar opposite of what you originally wanted. But yeah, so back to my hair. I think so I cut it short a couple times. I'd done like pixies and bobs, and I always loved it. And I was always told to not cut my hair short because I have a round face, and the shorter your hair is, the more round your face looks, and apparently that was a bad thing. But again, you have to remember the time frame that I was growing up in and the people that were raising me. The whole goal was to look skinny. The whole goal was to look small. I was a huge like weight loss society. I mean, it still is, but it was really bad back then. And I just remember constantly being told, like, you don't want short hair because your face will look fat. And guess what, guys? My face is round. Guess what, guys? I have a double chin. Guess what, guys? I don't care. Like, I'm beautiful the way that I am. Do I care about my health? Absolutely. But I can have whatever hair I want, and I can look good with the hair that I have, or the lack of hair. So around like 22, I had cut it really short, and I'd done like a little buzz off like the corner, and I loved it. And so then I did an undercut that was buzzed, and I loved it. And I remember at the time I was dating a man who was completely bald, and he was in like full support of it. So we went to the salon together with a woman that I knew and trusted, and she buzzed my head to like a 1.5, I think. So actually even shorter than I have it right now. And I fucking loved it. However, I did do it in November. Even in Florida, it was a year that we actually had cold, and I did not realize how much your hair keeps your head warm. So I immediately like went out to the store and bought a beanie because my head was freezing. But I loved it. It just made me feel so amazing. And self-confidence is a thing that I've struggled with. Body dysmorphia is a thing that I've struggled with. But I felt like it drew attention solely to my face. And for the first time, I felt like I really seen my beauty, and I realized I didn't need hair to be beautiful. And that was just so fucking empowering. So empowering. And then, on a mental health aspect and a neurodivergence aspect, especially because I live in Florida, if it's not the cold season, not that we really have a cold season, but you know what I mean, if it's the summertime or the springtime when it's really hot, my hair overstimulates me very quickly. And so it's always being pulled up, and not in a cute way. I'm not taking the time to do an updo. I'm just pulling it back. Especially having kids, the minute I'm like trying to do something with them or clean the house or whatever, even like running errands, I would notice that like going from the car to the store, I'd be like, oh, like F this, and I just put my hair up, and so I didn't ever feel cute because my hair was always just pulled back and not even like in a cute way. And it was overstimulating. Like when it wasn't up and I was having to constantly touch it, and the more I touch it, the more oily it gets, it would send me into spirals. Especially being ADHD, being autistic, we have a really hard time regulating our own body temperatures. And so the more I was like getting hot and having to push it back, the more I would just get agitated and overstimulated, and it would send me into a spiral. It was actually cut pretty short when I met my ex, my most recent ex, the biological father of my youngest child. And while being with him, I was really like deterred from cutting it again, even though he loved my style when we got together. This is something I also just recently posted about, because it wasn't just my hair, it was also my clothing style that he loved when we first got together, but then was determined to change. So I let it grow back out when me and him were together. And I did another bob when I was pregnant with my youngest, and I loved it, and I felt confident. But he really knocked down and like did a really good number on my self-confidence in the 2 years that we were together. But now, being like 2 more years into my healing journey and discovering so much about my mental health and my neurodivergence and what triggers it, I feel empowered. And being with my husband, I feel empowered because I know that he finds me absolutely beautiful in all of my states, no matter what I'm wearing or what haircut I have or if I have my glasses on or whatever it might be. He finds me absolutely beautiful. And, you know, I could be cheesy and say that that's because he sees the beauty on the inside first, but I also know that he sees that shine through, and he finds my physical body beautiful no matter what. And that really like boosted me to start finding that confidence within myself and not just from outside validation. Because my confidence has always been torn down from an outside source, I think I really did need that from him as a step up into my healing journey. So for like 2 months, I had been tossing it out. I'd made comments to him about it. He'd even pointed out, he's like, you keep saying that. Are you going to do it? And, you know, he'd seen pictures of me with my hair short or buzzed, but he'd never seen it in person. And so there was this small part of me that was like, what if I buzz all my fucking hair off and he doesn't find me attractive anymore? But then there was a bigger part of me that said, he will, and even if he doesn't, it makes you feel good. And we're living for ourselves over all, you know? So, it's really hot in Florida already. It started getting hot in like April or May. We already had like low 90s. And then the last couple of weeks we've actually had 100-degree weather already. I was already getting really hot, very overstimulated. It was just getting pulled up all the time. I was very irritated with it. So one evening I just went in my bathroom. He was at work, and I buzzed it. And I didn't tell him I was going to, and I didn't send him pictures that I did. I didn't show him until I showed up at his work. I didn't tell my kids. My oldest 3 kids were with their bio mom. They didn't know until I picked them up. So everybody got a shocker, but everybody has loved it. You know, I've gotten the comments, like I said, I've had a couple of people be like, whoa, was your hair buzzed? Like, why would you do that? And I know for the most part, people are not speaking out of a place of malice. It really is a shock. I mean, it is a huge difference. And I think it is also a reminder to a lot of people that I am non-binary. But because I am so femme-presenting on a day-to-day basis, and I'm not really outspoken about the fact that I'm non-binary, I still allow people to use she, her pronouns and call me a woman. I call myself a woman. I think people forget. And so when I do something like this, it really shocks them. But I like to use it as a conversation to, hey, even if I wasn't non-binary, I can still shave my head. That doesn't make me any less of a woman. It doesn't make me any less feminine. And it also opens up the conversation to femininity, what it is, how it can differ from person to person, how we get to decide what feminine looks like to us and feels like to us. Yeah, it opens up a lot of conversations. I've had people call me brave, and again, I know that they mean it as a compliment, because to them it does take bravery to do so, because they would be worried about what society thinks, what strangers think, what their family thinks, but I don't. I have, at one point, I have completely put my entire self-worth into others' opinions at points in my life. So I understand where they're coming from, but to me, it's taken me more bravery to change the appearance of my inside factors, my belief systems, my habits, my mental health, than it has taken bravery to buzz my head. So that's been like a whole thing these last couple of weeks. It's not just hair. It has opened a lot of doors and a lot of conversations, and for that I'm really, really thankful. These last couple weeks have been very insightful for me anyways. I'm really realizing that things that seem really casual, or like I said, just hair, just clothing, just this, just that, really are not. And to me, they're deeper, which makes me laugh, because a phrase that was used against me a lot by many different individuals is, it's not that deep. And I'm like, baby, I'm autistic. It's always that deep. I'm either reading way too far into things, or I'm taking things way too literally. That's just how my brain works. But I enjoy reading far into things. I enjoy dissecting things. I enjoy seeing the bigger picture. So yeah, that's been like a whole thing. Like I said, my hair, and then I've made a couple posts about my style, especially because so many of these things were impacted by the abuse that I suffered, especially as an adult. The domestic abuse, I wasn't allowed to be me. And that lack of freedom of expression, just I don't think people really realize how much it makes you lose your sense of identity. And it really fucks with your head. And so finally being in a place in my own life, but also with the partner that I have now, being able to reclaim that and really even find a new Katelyn, because I'm not the Katelyn that was abused at 18. I'm not the Katelyn that was abused at 23. You know, I'm 27, almost 28-year-old Katelyn. I'm married and I have 5 kids, and I've been through so many different things now that I'm a whole new person, but I don't know who that person is. So I'm finally, well, I do, but there's so much more to still discover. And it's just been such a beautiful journey to relearn myself and get to know the new aspects of myself. Because we're always growing. We're always changing. We're always relearning or learning new things. Especially if you're on the right path and you're living a healthy life, that's the way it should be. So it's been a very interesting couple of months. I'm going to pause here and take a drink really quick before we move on to the next thing that I want to talk about. So bear with me. If you're a new listener, you are probably catching on very quickly that I talk very, very fast. If you're not a new listener, you already know this. The only time I tend to slow down is if I am interviewing someone else, and that's just because it's a conversation. But when I'm sitting here talking to myself, I talk almost as quickly as my brain works. And the only time I really keep this up with other people is if they're people who I am very, very close with. So like my very close friends, my husband, and even they have a hard time keeping up. So sometimes when I'm doing these recordings, I have to remind myself to slow down, and I often get that reminder by looking down at the timer and realizing we've only been recording for about 20 minutes and my mouth is dry from talking so much. So bear with me. Sometimes I'm gonna have to take a break and take a little sip of water. I didn't do that in the beginning of recording because I felt like it was unprofessional and improper. And the longer I've done this podcast, the more I remind myself it's my fucking podcast. And if I want to take a break to take a drink of water, I'm going to. And sometimes I'll edit it out. And sometimes I'm going to sit here and I'm going to take a drink of water. And if you don't like it, you can skip forward 15 seconds, and if you're watching, you're gonna see my favorite cup, so it is what it is. But on to my next subject. I, in the last couple of months, have been reminded, yet again, just how not linear healing is. And it's not because I've been set back. If anything, the things that have come up have actually revealed a lot and allowed for, like, new healing or further healing. But it's a reminder that things are going to come up during life, and we're going to be triggered by things. And, like, things keep happening that I didn't expect to have happen. And it reminds me that I'm not in control. And that's actually a really beautiful thing. I don't want to be in control of everything. I am in control of myself and my reactions to things and the choices that I make. But I'm not in control of any of the stuff around me, to an extent. And I'm glad that I'm not. But, so one of the things that has come up is that I was actually contacted by my father. And I allowed that contact to remain open because he has been diagnosed for the 3rd time with cancer. And it's bad. It's very aggressive. And I know this, like, last Monday they started treatment. So obviously they're hoping that treatment is successful. There's a chance of treatment being successful. But it is a very, very aggressive form of cancer. And like I said, this is his 3rd time. He's not had really great health for about the last 10 to 15 years. He never really has, but it's really went really downhill. And I've allowed that connection, well, not connection, but communication to remain open because this is going to sound really callous, but for my sake, if he is to pass away, I would like to know that. It is really hard to have his number pop up on my phone from time to time. We don't chat on a daily basis. He's probably called me about 3 times since he initially reached out to let me know his diagnosis. And it is strictly to tell me what's going on with his health. But it is difficult. So I don't know if I've spoken on this before or not, but me and my father have never sat down and discussed the abuse, especially the sexual abuse. It is not something that has ever come out. It's not something I've ever said, you did this to me, fuck you. I stopped talking to him. I changed my phone number. He doesn't have my home address. Like, he didn't even know I got married. So I just kind of ghosted and left it at that. I think he knew I didn't want a relationship with him, but he didn't know why. And I'm not sure from his perspective, because I don't know what he remembers. I don't know if he remembers committing these atrocities against me, but I know for a really long time, even into adulthood, I never acted like he was my abuser, and that was a part of the abuse, was to pretend like it never happened, which is very, very common with survivors, especially survivors of, like, sexual trauma from childhood, from a family member. You're conditioned to protect them. You're conditioned that nothing ever happened. So for years, I would, like, see him at my brother's for, like, kids' birthday parties and family get-togethers, and I would even still hug him. And it felt fucking terrible inside every time I did. And I'd, like, side hug. I didn't want to give him a full-on hug, but I would still hug him. I'd still talk to him. I'd still, on occasion, tell him I love him. Because I didn't know how to not. I didn't want to make waves. I didn't want to ruin anybody's life, which is very ironic because they did their damnedest to ruin mine. But, yeah. So I don't think he really knows. And that's still something I struggle with. And with having him reach back out to me, these are the thoughts that have been going through my head, is like, I wonder if he knows. I wonder if he remembers. Over the years, he has admitted to being an alcoholic, which are words I never expected to hear come out of his mouth. The exact term, like, I am an alcoholic, I thought over my dead body he would ever admit that. But he did. But in the brief discussions I've had with my mother of just how bad things got with my father, because she claims to not have known how far it escalated, she thinks that he was too drunk on the occasions that physical abuse happened to remember them. When we were children, she would use the phrase of, like, alcohol makes you a different person. until he started abusing her, and then it doesn't make you a different person, it makes you who you truly are without inhibitions. So it's kind of like that, always back and forth. For so long I had it stuck in my head, especially because of her, that like he didn't remember. Not that that makes him any less at fault, he's still at fault for what he did to me, but if he doesn't even remember, what do I do with that? Am I gonna ruin his life by sitting him down and telling him all the fucking disgusting, terrible things he did to me? If I come out and tell people, is it going to ruin his relationships with my siblings? Is it going to ruin his relationships with his other grandchildren? Because he doesn't have a relationship with my children. And it was always carrying this responsibility for how my truth would affect everyone else. And obviously, in starting the podcast and in starting telling my story publicly, I take the chance. I have family members from his side of the family on my Facebook. I've made reels about him stealing my innocence. So, it's out there. But I still have never addressed it with him. I have never addressed it with my family. I don't have contact with the rest of my family. I don't think anyone else really cares, to be honest. Because I know they had to have seen it. Even one of my brothers is on my Facebook. We don't really communicate much, but like he wished me a happy Mother's Day. But we don't talk on a regular basis. We're not involved in each other's lives. But it's like, I don't think they care. They either think that I'm lying, which I've been accused of before, or they just don't care what he did to Katelyn. Katelyn's the outcast, she's the crazy, and they don't care. So, I've kind of been able to pull myself away from feeling responsible for how the truth might affect his life and the life of the rest of my family, and also just not really caring what they think of me, what they think of my truth, and just moving on. But it has been really difficult, like I said, having his number pop up on my phone and hearing his voice. And because he doesn't or claims to not know why we weren't in contact when we're on the phone, he's talking to me like he always would have. And he says, I love you before he hangs up, which I don't say back. I'm just like, okay, gotta go. I don't call him dad. Like, it's very weird. But I would like to know if he passes. So I've left that door cracked for now. And that's still a decision that I wrestle with. But I feel like we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Every day, if something comes up and I'm like, nope, you know what? This door needs to be closed and it needs to stay closed, and that's what I'll do. But I think it just really goes to show that it really needs to, these decisions cannot be like an overall, if you've went no contact, stay no contact. Regardless of the form of abuse, I really think it depends on the survivor and what they think is best for their mental health, what they think is best for their life. And I think I'm living proof of that in this moment. But then, like, another thing that has happened is my mother has reached out. So, she didn't reach out to me directly, but she sent yet another thing to one of my 2 biological daughters. And it's just really infuriating. I have told her before to not send anything to my house, especially because she was sending things without a return address, and because of all of the chaos I have going in my life right now with both of my exes, because both were domestic abuse situations. It's very triggering, it's very like ominous to have like a package arrive on your doorstep that has no return address, no markings that let you know who the F it's from until you open it. And I'm like, I'm not sure I want to open it unless I know who it's from. So I did like unblock her number and reached out to her and was like, I did open it and I see it's from you. Can you please not do this? And address like, well, I don't even think I said please, because I'm really at a point where I'm not asking, I'm telling in order to set a firm boundary. Do not send this shit to my house this way. But I also went another step and was like, I have made it very clear that you are not going to be involved in my children's lives if you're not involved in mine. My children would not exist without me. You have no right to them simply because of your title to them. You do not respect me. You do not care about me. You do not love me, even though you claim to. You don't get access to my children. I don't care who feels what type of way about that. It's just not going to happen. What she heard was, make sure that you send a return address. So she sent something for my youngest daughter on her birthday. And then just most recently, she sent a postcard for my older daughter, biological. My 3 oldest children, who are my children. I don't even really like referring to them as stepchildren. They are my children. She does not do anything for. She has not tried to learn their birthdays. She does not send them postcards. She is simply trying to maintain the claws that she had sunk in to the relationship she used to have with my oldest biological daughter. Even though she sent a gift to my youngest daughter, she's never really had a relationship with her. She was not there for me when I was with my daughter's biological father, when I was going through domestic abuse. When she did help me, she blamed it on me, that it was my fault I was being abused. It was my fault I was being treated the way I was when I was pregnant. And she holds that over my head to this day. She's never had a relationship with my youngest daughter. She's seen my youngest daughter 5 times. She's 2.5 years old. Well, not 2.5, but right over 2 years. And she's seen her 5 times in her entire life. You don't have a relationship with her. You certainly don't now. And so, obviously, you can tell by the way I'm talking, I am livid. And I still am. This happened like a week ago, and I reached out to her because she didn't sign it, but I've gotten to the point where I'm starting to recognize her handwriting. Also, my mom's really the only person that's ever sent postcards to my children, and that's because she travels, and so it's something she does with all of her biological kids, grandkids. So I took a picture of it, and I sent it to her, and I was like, is this from you? And she was like, yeah, I'm sorry, I forgot to sign it. And I'm like, that's not the fucking problem here. The problem here is I have made it very fucking clear to not contact my children. And because you have my address, you feel like you still have a right to do so. Honestly, guys, when I got this last postcard, I seriously considered filing for, like, a no contact order. The only issue is I don't have enough, like, proof that she's a danger to me or my children. I wish the courts were more about, like, parental rights, and I could just walk in and be like, I've told this woman not to contact my kids. I don't care that she's their grandparent. I don't care that she's my mom. I've blatantly told her, do not contact my children, and she's continuing to. I want a no contact order. I want it to be illegal to contact me and my children. I know I'm not going to be granted that. And I don't want to take away from people who, like, really, really need no contact orders. Because I can deal with it, and I can take the letter, and I can either save it for my daughter later, because when she's an adult, she can decide whether or not to have a relationship with her grandmother, or I can throw it away. I can handle it. My children are not old enough to, like, be seeing this communication attempt happening, but I'm just like, I don't want to have to keep dealing with this. I'm so tired of this. Guys, it's so... To get to this point in my life and to get to this point in my healing and still have this person who is so dead set on disrespecting your boundaries is like, oh my God. I'm just so thankful that I'm at where I'm at now so that I don't feel how I did at 13 and 14 and 15 and 16 and so on. Because I went into adulthood. She's never respected my boundaries. She's never respected me. Any love or help that she has offered always came with a price tag. It always came with consequences. And there was a time where I praised her for who she was and how I viewed her and the things that she did for me until I started to recognize the pattern of how anything that she ever did for me was held over my head. And it's hard because there are moments, especially as a mom myself, that I want my fucking mom. And I still get teary-eyed when I get that, like, thought pop up, like, oh my God, I want to tell my mom, or I want to text my mom, or I need my mom, because I really don't think we outgrow that need for a mother, for maternal love, and it's just really hard. Like, when I got diagnosed with diabetes in February, I wanted to call my mom, especially because my mom had been diagnosed with diabetes and had overcome it naturally, and so I knew she had experience with it. I knew she would understand how I was feeling, and all I wanted was my mommy, and I couldn't reach out to her. I knew that I couldn't disrespect myself in that way, but then also as a mom myself, like when I have really awesome things happen for my child or my children, I want to tell my mom, like I want to share it with her. And that's what's, like, so frustrating about parental abuse, is because they weren't always abusive, actively abusive. It wasn't always a bad day. there are good memories. There are times that they were there for you, so to speak. And so it's like this constant battle in your head. For instance, my oldest biological child recently had a evaluation done. It was diagnosed with generalized anxiety and ADHD, as well as 2 learning disabilities. And so we've really, like, me and my husband have been trying really hard to, like, get her into the proper therapy, which she is now, and see if medication is the right choice for her, all of the parental things. Her first year this last semester in public school was really hard. She was bullied really bad. Her behavior was really, like, bad, so to speak. She wasn't doing well. And so I've been really stressed about getting her into a better school and getting her the IEP and all of the mom things, trying to better her life, right? All of the support and assistance I didn't get it as a kid. I'm trying to make sure none of my children have to go without. And one of those steps that I took was to get her a scholarship. And I applied for it, and I waited weeks and weeks. And then they reached out to me and said they needed another proof of residency. So I sent it. And then just the other day, I was on the way to my husband's work, and I got an email that she'd been approved. And we got a educational scholarship for $10,000 for private schooling, tutoring, therapy, anything she needs educationally will be able to be provided for now. And I was just, like, immediately happy tears. Like, I'm getting teary-eyed right now thinking about it, because I'm like, we needed this so bad. She needed this so bad. Like, I want to be able to provide the best for her, and that's why these scholarships exist, because not everybody has the means, but that doesn't mean that we don't want to. And we have 5 kids, and multiple of them are neurodivergent. Like, me and my husband are neurodivergent. There's a lot of needs going on in this household at once. So this win was huge. And I'm driving along, and I'm thinking about all the people I want to tell, my husband, my friends, family, and then I'm like, God, I want to call Mom, and I want to tell her, like, I did it. I provided for her. I did it. But I can't. And it sucks. It sucks, guys. It's not easy. Like, healing does not always feel amazing. Especially when you're in no contact with people, especially when you have to put those boundaries up. I know there's an added layer when you yourself are a parent recovering from parental abuse. Even if you're not, obviously it's still hard. I'm not trying to say less or worse. I'm saying it's different. Because especially if that parent was involved with your children at one point, she was very involved in my oldest biological daughter's life. And so it's really hard to not want to still be like, look how far we've come. Look at all the amazing things that are happening in her life. Look at what I've done. Look at how I'm able to provide for her. And I wasn't when I first had her, because I was a single mom at 19 with a medically needy child. Like, look at what I've done. And that is, without a doubt, still my inner child wanting that parental figure to be proud of me. I'm not just wanting to share out of happiness. I'm wanting to share because I want that parental figure, be it my mother or my father, to be like, wow, I'm proud of you. You're a great mom. You're a great person. Look at what you've done, Katelyn. And just being able to sit and reflect and realize that that's where that need is coming from is really helpful. But it's not easy. I know I've said that a couple times now, but it's really not easy. Part of this podcast and even my posts on my personal social medias, I am very raw with healing and just what it looks like and just how I can feel. And some days it feels like you're soaring with the stars, and other days it feels like you're trudging through a fucking mud pit. And sometimes it's different things and it's different levels, but it's not always easy. And these last couple months have just kind of shown that. I've had days where I'm like on fire and I'm like, woohoo, we've healed all the things. And then other days I'm like, no we haven't. And even if we've healed one thing, new things can continuously be happening, which they are. The other stressor has been that daughter's biological father. We're still in the middle of a court case. I don't speak about it a lot just because we are still in the middle of court. But it has been extremely hard, not only as a parent, seeing how it's affecting my daughter on a daily basis, but also as the victim of his abuse, because he was abusive to me. and still is, because he's a narcissist. And so even though we're not in a romantic relationship, he still uses whatever he can to try to abuse me mentally. And thankfully, I've done enough separating that I am able to only show up as her mom. But it's still triggering sometimes. It was really hard the last 2 weeks, not 2 weeks, 2 months, because I was noticing just how badly it was triggering my CP. If I even seen his name pop up on my phone, I would literally get such bad anxiety instantaneously that I would start shaking. If I had to reach out to him to let him know that, like, she got something done or something happened, or just let him know that she's okay, basic co-parenting communication, I'd start shaking because I don't know how he's going to respond. He's not cordial at this point. And having to work through that with my therapist, like, hey, this is triggering my CPTSD really bad. Like, my anxiety is through the roof. I'm having flashbacks. I'm shaking. I'm having meltdowns. But cutting contact with this person is not an option. This is a person in a one shape, form, whatever, that I'm going to have some form of communication with for the next 10 years. Even if it's on a monthly basis. Like, trying to heal that. Trying to take care of me while also taking care of my children. Whew, guys, it's not easy, man. Being traumatized, being neurodivergent, and being a parent. Listen, if you're watching the video, you've seen the look I just made. But if you're listening, I just stared at the screen and blinked a couple of times because, like, what the fuck? Parents ask all the time why there's not a guidebook to parenting, but I want there to be a guidebook to being a traumatized neurodivergent parent. Because it just adds so many layers. It adds so much, and I wouldn't change it for a thing. I love being a mama 5. I love being a mama. It's everything I ever wanted to be. But oof, the load we carry is heavy sometimes, you guys. And then another thing that's been triggering my CPTSD in the last 2 months is the other biological father of my youngest. I have to maintain, we'll call it surveillance, on his socials as well as his wife's socials. He abandoned my daughter about 1.5 years ago, and has had absolutely no contact since, has not attempted contact. We've seen him watching social media, my husband's social media. For those who are not aware, there are certain social media platforms that let you know when someone views your profile and who viewed your profile. So we've seen them watching, but there's been no attempt to even see how his biological daughter is doing. I call her my child because at this point I feel like he is not anything but a sperm donor. But I am wary. I didn't take any legal action when I was with him. I didn't take any legal action when he abandoned her. I've been kind of biding my time to wait to see if he keeps the abandonment for a certain amount of years to try to protect us from him. But knowing that at any moment he could try to come back in, and because of the courts being what they are, and because of not having as much solid evidence as I would like, knowing that there is a chance that not only he, but his wife could eventually have rights to my daughter and be involved in her life is terrifying. These people are sick on a level I cannot describe to y'all. They did a number on my mental and on my oldest daughter's mental I cannot explain to y'all. Living in that home with them for 2 years was like being in a prison. Being tortured. It was not something I can put into words in this episode. And so all of these things have been weighing on my mental, while so many other beautiful things are happening. Life is so good in so many different ways, but carrying what I've been carrying, it's been really challenging, and that's why I took the break. You know, and I know I explained some of it in the last episode, but I didn't go really too far into detail because I really wanted to focus in on the, like, internet insanity topic. But your girl, your boy over here I've been carrying a lot, and I just wanted to take the opportunity to share it and really show, like, life is a beautiful storm. It's not always storming, but it's a beautiful ride, you know? Like, because some days, man, it's... I live in Florida, okay? Some days it's a hurricane, and other days it's like, let's go to the pool, this is beautiful, where's my margarita? That's what life is like. And these last couple months have just been like that. And I haven't really been speaking on it, especially with my exes, because it just feels like there's that aspect of it where I still feel like a victim, and I'm scared, and I'm being put in that wounded place, and I feel like there's still like that power dynamic happening where I feel like they do hold power over me. And so it's been like not something I've really spoken on. But as things progress, as I discuss with my lawyer how much I can talk about publicly, I will do so, because I do think it's a dynamic that really needs to be talked about. So many people go through this. So many victims of domestic abuse share children with their abusers and have to co-parent with their abusers. They have to watch their children be abused as well. It's something that has to be talked about. I just have to make sure I do it in a way that protects me and protects my daughter. So, yeah, guys, that was today's episode. I hope that even though I kind of covered a couple different things that have been happening in my life, you still got something of value out of it. I hope I didn't drive you guys insane. But we're coming up on an hour. It is now 7:20. My voice is cracking because I am exhausted. My lovely husband has put our daughter to sleep, our youngest daughter, and walked the dog so that I could record this evening to make sure I didn't miss another week. So I'm going to go tell him how much I appreciate him. And I appreciate you guys so much for being here, so much for listening, so much for viewing. And I just hope it impacts your life in a amazingly positive way. Love you guys.